Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your space for black news, views, and opinions. Today is Monday, February 7th. I'm Seth London.
I'm Nielle.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, FBI officials are describing the threat made against HBCUs this week, detailing the plot that involved multiple pipe bombs. Meanwhile, a former clerk for a potential Supreme Court nominee was caught trying to make their boss look better on Wikipedia. Then North Carolina's Supreme Court strikes down a Republican-drawn congressional map, making this the third time a court has rebuffed gerrymandering just this year.
Plus, there's a parking ticket scam you should know about. Beware next time you find a fine on your windshield. And Floyd Money Mayweather is taking on a new challenge, trading the ring for the racetrack, and we will explain.
We have all that and so much more on this Monday. Are you ready to talk about it? It's our voice and it's our truth, so let's get it.
Welcome in on this Monday. FBI officials say one of the callers who threatened to blow up Bethune-Cookman University last week described a plot that involved placing duffel bags with pipe bombs around the campus. Investigators in Daytona Beach, Florida say in a 20-minute phone call, a suspect said the bags of bombs contained C4 explosives and threatened a mass shooting, saying that a gunman would open fire on campus around lunchtime. Now, so far, no one's been arrested, but the Bureau and ATF agents say they have identified at least 5 people of interest. Investigators say the callers are tech-savvy teens who used fake numbers to phone in these threats. Now, this is interesting because they say the caller claimed to be a member of a neo-Nazi group, the same group that was also, the leader was recently convicted for making similar threats to black churches and nearly 100 other locations. So they're following this pattern.
Yeah. You know, threats to black institutions, sadly, this is not something that's new. And a lot of people online right now are criticizing how much news attention these stories are getting. And so there's a story in The Atlantic that I really want to encourage everyone to go read about. And it talks about being attending an HBCU has always been an act of courage. And so just sending, again, more love and light to everyone attending an HBCU right now in America.
Definitely. All right, former Vice President Mike Pence says it was an un-American for Donald Trump to suggest one person could decide a presidential election. Pence told a meeting of the Conservative Federalist Society Friday that Republicans will have a tough time getting back into the White House if they continue to insist a vice president can alter an election.
The presidency belongs to the American people and the American people alone. And frankly, there is no idea more un-American than the notion that any one person could choose the American president. Under the Constitution, I had no right to change the outcome of our election.
Trump criticized Pence's comments. The former president called the former VP a, quote, conveyor belt for the old crow Mitch McConnell to get Biden elected president as soon as possible. Political analysts say Pence's comments could be a signal the Indiana Republican may run for president in 2024. If he does, it will be interesting to see what that base is. I applaud him for finally standing up and saying this, right? Because at the end of the day, I really think they would have been coming for him. So I'm glad that he stood up, but we'll see how it works out.
Absolutely, Romeo. Democrats say the most diverse Federal Reserve Board of Governors is being blocked by the GOP. President Biden's 3 nominees as to the central bank include a white woman, a black man, as well as a black woman. Conservatives say one of the nominees, Lisa Cook, however, is unqualified. Cook, she is a professor of economics at Michigan State University, has a degree in economics from Oxford, as well as a doctorate in economics from the University of California, Berkeley. African-American supporters of Cook say Republican attacks on Cook are racially motivated. President Biden is spending $15 million to the Democratic National Committee to beef up his party's House and Senate battles in this fall's midterm election. Now, Democrats say they are starting the biggest mobilization ever for a midterm election. And right now, Democrats must count on Vice President Kamala Harris to break the votes in a 50-50 Senate. Meanwhile, Democrats only have a 12-seat advantage in the House. The White House is using its power to help determine which seats remain Democrat or turn blue. Political analysis predict the GOP could take control of one or both houses of Congress.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she will support congressional staffers' efforts to unionize. The news comes as Black and Latino staffers go public about toxic workplace experiences on Capitol Hill. There's an Instagram account called Dear White Staffers, put together by non-white workers on the Hill. And the posts, they share horror stories of racism, low pay, and harassment by white staffers inside the U.S. Capitol. Pelosi's spokesman says the speaker supports the right of workers to organize for better work conditions. And this news comes after a majority of employees over at the Democratic Campaign Committee also voted to form a union. It would be very hard for Democrats not to support a union effort, knowing that they have always been behind unions.
Absolutely. You know, this is strange to the naked eye, of course, because you're not supposed to call out your boss. But hearing that your boss is okay with you unionizing does have to make them feel very great.
Yeah, Seth, to your point, Democrats are staunch union supporters, and the unions help get most Democrats elected in this country. So it's not surprising that Pelosi is behind this push.
Absolutely.
All right. In our next story, the federal trial of 3 former Minneapolis police officers involved in the death of George Floyd resumes today. A federal judge suspended the trial last week after one defendant tested positive for COVID-19. All 3 are accused of depriving Floyd of medical aid. The trial was delayed after one of the suspects tested positive for COVID-19. The 3 officers either sat on George Floyd or stood by doing nothing as Derek Chauvin kneeled on his neck. They'll be tried on separate state charges later this year.
A Connecticut police union wants the detectives suspended for departing the probe of 2 dead black women reinstated. The Bridgeport Police Union is filing a grievance against the city. A spokesman says the police chief rushed to judgment when he suspended the cops. Mayor Joseph Gannon suspended detectives Kevin Cronin and Angel Lanos for how they treated the family of the women. Relatives of Lauren Smith Fields and Brenda Rawls said officers did not tell them about the woman's death until days after their bodies were found. Fields, as you may recall, is a 23-year-old black woman who was found dead the morning after a date with the man she met on the Bumbling dating app. And Rawls is a 53-year-old woman who family members say died after going to meet a man in her neighborhood. You cannot put these men back on the force. It's obvious they're being investigated because they failed to handle things and do it by right procedures. If you don't do the right thing, you have to be looked into. Matter of fact, I will go look into some past things that the police officers may have been a part of to see how they get past that as well.
Right. Yeah, this is a huge sign of what accountability looks like. When you are responsible to protect and serve, you should do just that. And so this is good news. We said at the beginning of the year that we would be seeing a lot of accountability for police officers across the country, and this is definitely a response to that.
I don't even understand why a police officer, knowing what you did, even if you say it was an accident, would even want to be back on the force. I feel like if I were a police officer, the amount of guilt that I would have because of how America has been dragging me, I wouldn't even want to be back on the force. And the message that it sends that a police officer would even want to go back to the force really lets you know that you just do not care about the black community at all.
Police unions are so powerful. They hold a lot of power when it comes to elections, when it comes to getting police officers accused of wrongdoing back on the force. And so at every chance, it seems they wield their power, and not for situations that are encouraging. That if there is an issue that needs to be investigated, one would hope that the union would support a thorough, transparent investigation. Not the case this time.
Seth, you're so right. And one of the things that people are demanding is that the Police Bill of Rights be reviewed, because that's what holds them in power and protects them.
Yep, absolutely. All right, check this out. A former clerk for a possible Supreme Court nominee was caught on Wikipedia boosting their former boss and framing her potential competitors as less favorable. According to Politico, the staffer made the changes in support of Ketanji Brown Jackson, the D.C. Circuit Court judge, who is reported to be one of President Biden's top picks to replace outgoing Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer. Politico says a group of Jackson's former law clerks identified the former staffer as the person who changed the Wikipedia pages, though that person has not publicly responded to the allegations. Former staffers say the clerk's been responsible for updating the page for several years. Politico said that Judge Brown declined to comment on the story. So the staffer apparently wasn't posting negative, blatantly negative statements about other potential black nominees, but they were taking out some things that they felt liberals might not agree with, for the competition and adding things in for Ketanji Brown Jackson that they thought might make them seem more favorable to Democrats overall. It's Wikipedia, it's an open platform, but it's still the optics of it aren't great.
Exactly. It's that it doesn't look good right now. You know, we want transparency and everything. We want transparency with police body camera footage. We want transparency with someone that we want to get into office. And so it just doesn't look good. But also, like you said, it's Wikipedia. It's not the most trusted website also. And anybody can go in there and edit whatever they want to.
Yeah, this is what politics looks like. When you have a candidate and you want them to win, you have people on your team. And sometimes you can't control what they do. But I don't think that this should be held against the nominee because, you know, she didn't have anything to do with this, and she's definitely still qualified for the job.
I agree, but things are being looked at through a microscope, so you have to be very careful because this could jeopardize a situation or an opportunity they could have, right? It could set them back. So we'll see how this plays out as it goes forward.
Yeah, Neil, absolutely right. She is extremely qualified, so we don't want that to overpower her accomplishments. Excuse me. So the first African-American leader of the nation's largest LGBTQ plus group is suing them, alleging he was fired because he is black. Alfonso David was fired last September by the Human Rights Campaign. The organization fired him after a report by New York Attorney General Letitia James said David helped former Governor Andrew Cuomo discredit a woman who accused Cuomo of wrongdoing. But David says the group underpaid him and discriminates against non-white people.
A former West Virginia lawmaker is agreeing to a plea deal for his part in the January 6 attacks on the U.S. Capitol. Derek Evans filmed himself entering the Capitol just weeks after he was sworn in as a member of the West Virginia House of Delegates. He resigned from his position. Sentences for his Evans is expected later this month.
South Dakota, now the 10th state to make anti-trans legislation officially the law of the land. Check this out. Governor Kristi Noem signed a bill banning transgender girls and women from playing on sports teams for women. The bill is the first of its kind in 2022. Trans participation in sports has been a hot-button issue across the nation. Some LGBTQ advocates say the issue is becoming a focus of conservatives who are trying to rally their base prior to the midterm elections. The law affects state-accredited schools for both public and private institutions. This bill follows similar bills in South Dakota that ban transgender students from using the restroom of their choice.
A Colorado prosecutor says he won't be filing charges in the death of a 6-year-old girl who was killed on an amusement park ride last year. DA Jeffrey Cheney says he can't prove which 2 employees buckled the young child into the Glenwood Caverns Park ride. Now, the child plunged 110 feet inside the haunted mine drop. State regulators fined the park $68,000 after the accident. The child's family has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the amusement park.
North Carolina Supreme Court is striking down a GOP-drawn congressional map that would have given Republicans control over 11 of the state's 14 voting districts. The court's 4-3 decision forces the GOP to withdraw the maps. They have until the 18th of this month to submit new maps or the court will approve a new plan. This is the 3rd time this year state courts around the nation have tossed out Republicans' drawn maps. Ohio and Alabama judges have ordered state legislators to fix maps that hurt African-American voters.
In other voting news, a black activist from Tennessee has been sentenced to 6 years in prison for just trying to vote. Pamela Moses founded the Memphis BLM chapter, and officials say she is ineligible to vote because of several 2015 felony charges. Now, Moses says officials told her that her voting rights had been restored. However, in handing down the sentence, the judge said Moses tricked officials to be able to vote. Her lawyer plans to appeal. I was reading comments on this story online on Twitter and Instagram. I love to get in a deep dive of comments. And so everyone was pretty stuck on the prior felonies, and that's what held everybody up. But the reality is that there's a story about 4 white men who voted in 2020 on behalf of dead people, and they got 1 to 3 years in jail. And we have a black woman here who was just trying to vote, and she says that she feels like she was eligible to vote. And so, I mean, I don't know. I don't think that it should be this much of a big deal for her to just try to exercise her God-given right to vote in America.
Yeah, you know, I agree with that. At the end of the day, I'll say this. For those men you spoke about, right, that signed up under dead people's names to try and vote, and they only got 1 and 2 years, that's a smack in the face because, to me, that's done I mean, you did it on purpose when you do something like that. In her case, she thought she may have been following the right procedures to take. She did her time, did her crime, did all that, and she really wanted the opportunity to vote. She should not be locked up for that long.
I think also a bigger conversation is how Black Lives Matter is being painted over the past few weeks. All of the negative press, you know, things like this happen to the Black Panther Party when there are organizations that are unapologetically Black. They're not favorable in this country. And so with this and all the other stories, you know, we just have to be very particular and careful about how we're so quick to put so much blame on the term Black Lives Matter, when at the end of the day, all of the things that we are seeing that's happening in this country when it comes to criminal justice reform and police reform are because of those individuals.
Agreed. Absolutely. All right, so Michigan prosecutors are asking a judge to stop the parents of a school shooter from making romantic gestures to each other in court. Jennifer and James Crumbly are charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter in a November school shooting allegedly committed by their son, Ethan. Prosecutors say the couple have mouthed the word "I love you" during in-court and virtual appearances. The DA says their gestures make a mockery of the court proceedings. The 15-year-old is facing terrorism and murder charges for allegedly killing 4 students and injuring several others.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams is apologizing for referring to white police officers as crackers. The apology comes after video of the comments made in 2019 surfaced last week. The mayor is an ex-NYPD captain, and he made the statement at an event with Harlem business owners. Adams said it was inappropriate for him to have used the derogatory term for white people. The president of the city's police union says they have spoken with the mayor about his comments. Paul Lynch, who is white, says that people should not rush to judgment about these remarks. Cracker definitely doesn't have the same connotation that other racial epithets have, but inappropriate, I see and understand, for the mayor to be on tape using such language to refer to people, because it's clearly racial, and he's got to be the mayor of all of New York City, not just black folks.
That's the problem, that you are the mayor of everybody. You are already a black man. The odds are already against you, and so there's been just so much with Eric Adams just already coming into that I'm a little nervous, honestly, to see how his term is going to turn out, because there's just so much negative press on him. Every week we have a new story, and this was absolutely inappropriate to say when you are the leader of everybody. Black, white,
these terms of the past keep coming up, you know, the N-word, you know, the negative term of what cracker means in America. And what I find most interesting is back in the 70s, we could say these terms. I mean, you've seen them on TV, and they were used in comedy sitcoms. And now, you know, it's just we're living in such a cancel culture world. I'm not saying right or wrong, but there's a lot of punishment when we use these terms today.
I agree with that. And here's a mayor that has a lot on his plate. He's hit the ground running. He's trying to do his best. However, I'm shocked this didn't come out when he was running for mayor, because this is my first time hearing of this. So I'm shocked someone didn't try to use this against him when he was running. He's in office. He has a lot on his plate. I think he can get past this, because I think like he's been showing that he can do what he's capable of doing right now.
Yeah, this is a reminder that everything now is recorded and will live with you and haunt you forever. So be careful.
Yeah, most definitely, Seth.